Hey there, guys. Welcome to today's live stream. So, as you can notice in the background, I am doing things a little bit different today, um, but nothing is really going to change that much. Um, we're kind of having stuff going on in the house, so that was sort of the reason why my background kind of looks different. But I do want to mention that in advance, everything's going fine. Let me get this to present. I always forget which one it is. But I did want to mention that. So it's going to look different in the background, but there's nothing of issue. We're just kind of having things, renovations in the house and things of that sort. So that was the reason why. So if you guys didn't watch yesterday's Instagram live stream, I mentioned a few sort of announcements. I'm not going to go into them too much today. But basically, what I want to mention, and as far as what's coming up soon, I do have a live stream. Excuse me. I actually have a 14-day trial. I meant to say that first. So I have the 14-day trial coming up. It's going to be starting March the 6th. So at the beginning of March is when I will be starting that 14-day trial where you can join Trainerize, be able to join my fitness program, get that access to Trainerize and access to Evolution Nutrition, or you'll have access to your meal planning and things of that sort. So that 14-day trial will be coming up in the next month, just right before spring is about to start. So definitely check that out. If you're interested, definitely reach out to me and let me know that you would like to be a part of the 14-day trial. And anybody that's part of the 14-day trial, you have to have not been in the program previously. So it's for anybody that's new who's not been into the 14-day trial. Alrighty, so it's pretty much the major thing that I wanted to mention. I'm going to be promoting more about it and giving out a link to where you can sign up for that. But I wanted to mention that in advance. And of course, um, again, I want to keep pushing my Instagram live streams. They're going to be at 12 every Tuesday, and the Facebook live streams will stay the same. Wednesday at 12 every Wednesday. So that's something I want to keep in mind. The Instagram live streams, I'm trying to push that out sort of to get more exposure on that because I am talking about separate topics from what I talk about here on Facebook. So definitely check those out. The Instagram live streams are more of discussion based rather than what I do here where I talk through sort of presentation. But I don't want to keep talking about this. I want to get into today's topic. That's pretty much all I wanted to mention to you guys today as far as that's concerned. So let's go ahead and get started with what we're talking about today. And again, this is sort of an extension of what we've been talking about for the past couple of weeks on our live streams, talking about the various systems in the body. And today, what we're going to be talking about is probably the most important system, and that is the cardiovascular system. So, the cardiovascular system focuses on a lot of different functions of our body. It is our basically our lifeblood, to say the least, of our being human and being able to live our lives is all a part of the cardiovascular system. So the cardiovascular system is composed of the heart, the blood vessels that transport blood to and from the heart and tissues of the body. So this is one of the many systems that regulate the human body. And like I just mentioned, it is necessary for survival functions of our body. So the major part of the cardiovascular system is the heart. So the heart is a muscular pump that rhythmically contracts to push blood throughout the body. It is positioned in the center of the thoracic cavity. The heart is composed of four chambers that are delineated into two interdependent pumps, which I'm going to talk about. So the heart itself, talking about the functions of the heart, there's various different functions as it relates to the heart. So before I go into these functions, I do want to mention that the heart itself is actually a muscle. It's actually separate, though it's separate from, our normal muscles, which are known as smooth muscles, muscles that, well, you have I think I mentioned this last week, but you have three separate categories of muscles, and that's cardiac muscle, skeletal muscle, and smooth muscle. So cardiac muscle is, of course, the muscle of the heart. It's the basically the only muscle as it relates to the heart. Um, Skeletal muscle is the type of muscle tissue that connects to bones and generates force that create movement. Skeletal muscle is basically the muscles that we use for like weightlifting, everyday activities, things of that nature. Smooth muscles are different. So smooth muscle is involuntary, non-saturated muscle top that is found in organs. So smooth muscle is found in organs. Skeletal muscle is our muscles that basically perform our daily activities. And then cardiac muscle is the muscle of the heart. So I do want to mention that sort of in advance. So like I just talked about, there's various different chambers of the heart, and there's basically two interdependent sections or interdependent pumps of the heart. So let's go ahead and talk about the functions of the heart. So again, like I just mentioned, the heart is primarily focused on pumping blood throughout the body. That is its primary focus. So there's different ways that you can sort of measure sort of how blood is pumped throughout the body. And one of these is known as stroke volume. So the amount of blood pumped out of the heart with each contraction is known as the stroke volume. So the rate at which the heart beats is referred to as the heart rate or the cardiac output, which is the volume of blood pumped out by the heart rate, by the heart, I guess I should say, and stroke volume. So these are sort of different ways that is sort of measured on how basically the blood is pumped through the heart, how many beats of the heart, the volume of blood being pumped, things of that nature. So when it comes to, talking about heart, sort of heartbeat, heart rate, things of that nature, there are two conditions as it relates to the heart to be aware of. And these can go basically interconnect into when we talk about fitness, because these are something that to be aware of, especially before you start a workout routine or start doing something more vigorous activity, I guess I should say. So these two conditions are known as bradycardia and tachycardia. You may have heard these terms before. Um, so basically what these terms are, one of the one of the terms is higher and one of the terms is lower. That's something to keep in mind to sort of understand these a little bit better because their names are sort of can be kind of confusing to relate them to what they mean. So bradycardia, what we're talking about first, is basically the level of heart rate that are below 60. So this is below a heart rate of 60. And then tachycardia is a level of heart rate that's above 100. So there are various symptoms as it relates to these two levels of heart rate, and the symptoms can be similar to each other. Eh, So their similars are similar. Their symptoms are similar. So dizziness, confusion, and shortness for breath can all be related to bradycardia and tachycardia. So when I sort of researched the difference between these two, again, one of them is a slower heart rate and one of them is a higher heart rate, but they do both have a similar sort of symptoms. Their symptoms aren't that much different. So let me mention that when I'm talking about below 60 and above 100, when it relates to these, that's basically going by its heart rate. So basically 60 beats in a minute or 100 beats in a minute is basically what that's meaning by having an above 100 and then having a below 60. So that's something to keep in mind. So you can actually measure your heart rate. It may not be as accurate as, say, you go to the doctor and measure it, but there is a way that you can actually measure your heart rate. I do this with clients as well, like when I've trained clients in person, I've done this. And it's something to basically keep in mind, especially like, again, like going back to starting a workout routine, being aware of your baseline health and things of that nature is very important before you get started so that you are not, overexerting yourself and you're not brought into a situation to where you can't handle your workouts. So basically how you measure your heart rate is placing your index finger and your middle finger around the palm side of the wrist. You locate the artery by feeling the pulse for the index and middle finger. So basically this is found sort of on your wrist, like it mentions here, the palm side of the wrist. Locate that artery by feeling the pulse for the index and middle finger. When measuring the pulse during rest, count the number of beats in 60 seconds. So when measuring during exercise, you count the number of beats in 6 seconds rather than 60 seconds and add a zero to that number. So that's basically you were sort of, I guess you would somewhat say multiplying that number because in 60 seconds you're measuring just the resting pulse. In 6 seconds you're measuring the active pulse or active heart rate, I guess you would say. So again, you place the index finger, middle finger around the palm side of the wrist, locate the artery by feeling for the pulse on the index or the index and middle finger, measuring the pulse during rest, count the number of beats in 60 seconds, so count the number of beats in a minute. And then when measuring during exercise, count the number of beats in 6 seconds rather than 60 seconds and add a zero to that number. So, going back to as far as being accurate with measuring heart rate and, sort of seeking out your doctor, that's something that's very important because I don't want to say, I'm not a doctor, anything of that sort. I do have the knowledge as it relates to, fitness and health, but I have no, sort of medical background. So that's something to keep in mind. But I do want to mention one thing is that, being aware, measuring your heart rate can be sort of a preventative measure. So if you do have bradycardia or tachycardia, you can sort of gauge whether you have that or not by just measuring your own heart rate. And if you do have an issue and you think you have an issue of that and you have those symptoms, you can definitely reach out to the doctor and talk to your doctor about that. So that's something that you can do at home to sort of be aware of. Alrighty, so we're going to continue to sort of talk a little bit more about the heart and sort of how it relates as the transportation of blood. So the heart, of course, is the main, you know, organ that's transporting our blood. So blood is a unique life-sustaining substance in our body that supplies the organs and cells in our body with nutrients. It regulates body temperature, it fights infections, and so much more. So the blood focuses on three different functions in our body. It focuses on transportation, regulation, and protection. So I know that what I'm talking about today is related to the heart and cardiovascular system, but blood is one of the most essential parts of the cardiovascular system, and not only that, our life itself. So blood, again, like I just mentioned, it has these three functions, and that's the transportation, regulation, and protection. So, what does the blood do as it relates to these three different functions? So, when you talk about transportation, the blood transports oxygen and nutrients to tissues, it transports waste products from tissues, transports hormones or any stem cells, organs, and tissues, growth factors, anything of that sort, and it carries heat throughout the body as well. That's as it relates to transportation. Regulation regulates the body temperature and acid balance in the body. That's as it relates to regulation. And protection, it protects the body from excessive bleeding by clotting, contains specialized immune cells to help fight disease and sickness. So blood has an essential part in, basically fighting against any illness that we encounter in our lives. So that's something to keep in mind. And again, I know I'm sort of talking about the heart and things of that nature, but blood is an essential part of, the heart and transporting and pumping our blood. So let's move on to arteries, capillaries, and veins. So these are all blood vessels is what I'm talking about here. So blood vessels themselves are separated in three categories, which is arteries, capillaries, and veins. So basically what these are, arteries carry blood away from the heart into the lungs. Capillaries are known as the smallest smallest blood vessel and is the exchange site between the blood and tissues. Veins carry deoxygenated blood back to the heart and then to the lungs. So you've got your arteries, which are carrying the blood away from the heart to the lungs, and then you got your veins, which are carrying deoxygenated blood back to the heart and then to the lungs. And then you got your capillaries, which is basically an exchange site. It's basically sort of an assistance blood vessel with all of those other functions. So you got arteries that carry it away, veins that carry it to. So that's something to keep in mind. There's so many different functions as it relates to arteries and veins. And of course, I don't want to go into too much of a detail because it can get pretty deep when we talk about these sort of subjects. But that's something that I do want you to be aware of. So, as I mentioned, we talked about the heart, we've talked about blood. This is all connected into the cardiovascular system. And I do want to relate this somewhat back to your health and fitness. So, hypertension is a big part of your blood, sort of blood pressure is an important part as it relates to your health. So, hypertension is described as a constantly elevated blood pressure or otherwise known as high blood pressure. So, when you get your when you have your blood pressure measured, usually when you go to the doctor, or at times you can have it at home when you have a home blood pressure cuff. So your normal blood pressure is known as a systolic 120 to a diastolic 80. And then when you're at stage 1 hypertension, which is high blood pressure, it is at a systolic between 130 to 139 and a diastolic 80 to 89. So there's different stages of hypertension, but I did want to mention that sort of showing the gauge between normal blood pressure and stage 1 hypertension. And when you're looking at hypertension, that's something to sort of be aware of again when it relates to starting any physical activity. You want to make sure that, you know, it doesn't affect your ability to perform any different, exercises or physical activity. And it's great to be aware of your blood pressure, just like measuring your heart rate. This sort of knowing these things can be a preventative measure on any other health factor that you're dealing with. Like again, measuring your heart rate, and again, seek out a doctor for any of these. Measuring your heart rate focuses on, being able to detect bradycardia and tachycardia. Hypertension, measuring your blood pressure, is able to be aware of hypertension if you have high blood pressure or low blood pressure as well. That's another thing too. So these are things that you can sort of be aware of, not only just to prepare for fitness or to prepare for more vigorous activities and exercise, but to be aware of as your overall health. And that's something that I wanted to sort of hone back into because I know I talk about these big terms and I talk about, sort of the organs and things of that nature and the systems, but I do want to connect it to your overall health and fitness. So that's pretty much all I have for today, guys. I hope that you found this all interesting. I hope you sort of got some value from everything I discussed today. I do want to continue on um, with expanding on this, of course. And what I'm going to go into on the next live stream is I'm going to go into more exercises, but it is still going to connect somewhat to what we've talked about with the systems. And I'm going to talk about core training, which is one of the most fundamental parts of basically your exercise regimen. And I will discuss that in detail next time, but I do want to talking about the core abdominal area and why it's important to train that part of your body. So that'll be my next live stream. And on Instagram, I know I mentioned the Instagram live stream. On the Instagram live stream, I'm going to be talking about this coming Tuesday, I'll be talking about goal-based nutrition strategies. So I'm going to go into a little bit about nutrition. I'm going to discuss a little bit there about nutrition. And again, the Instagram live streams are more of a discussion base, whereas the Facebook live stream is more sort of showing you a presentation, showing you more of in depth what these topics are that I'm talking about. So that's kind of how I'm sort of dividing the two between each other. But again, Instagram live streams will be at 12 Central Time on Tuesday. Facebook live streams 12 Central Standard Time on Wednesday. And again, definitely check out the Instagram live stream because it's a separate topic from what I talk about here on Facebook. So thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate you taking the time to watch. If, of course, you miss any of the live stream, I always have them posted either here on Facebook or the Instagram live stream stays posted on Instagram. I do post on YouTube as well. I have all my previous live streams that I've done all on YouTube, so you can watch those there and definitely check those out if you miss any of these live streams I do during the week. So I do want to mention that as well. But if you guys have any questions, of course, like I mentioned every week, feel free to contact me through email or through my phone number. Send me a text and let me know that it is you. Um, and that's pretty much all I have for today. And I look forward to talking to you guys next week about core training and sort of how that relates to, the most fundamental parts of, your fitness and exercise regimen. Um, Before I go, I do want to mention, of course, again, that 14-day trial is coming up March 6th. I will be posting a link to where you can sign up for that pretty soon. But I just want to get that out there. This is for anybody who's not been a part of the training program, who has not been a part of any of the trials that I've done previously. So definitely check that out. And thank you guys again for taking the time to watch. Again, I hope that you found some information to take with you today. And I look forward to talking to you next week when we talk about core training. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.